A ship seems to be moving towards the city centre, but it's trapped in a small stretch of water. Ludger Gerdes built this 43-metre, 150-foot ship. It evokes many associations. Seeing this temple-like wooden house on the edge of the city can make you yearn for faraway places. More than 60 modern avant-garde sculptures are on view in the public areas of the city, making it a permanent and unique open-air exhibition of modern art. Especially popular with visitors is the temporary exhibition Sculpture Projects that happens once every 10 years. In 2007 alone, more than 500,000 visitors came to see the exhibition. Over 100 days, 34 completely new sculptures, video installations and other projects adorn the cityscape. They were created especially for this show. So what is it that makes Münster, with just 280,000 inhabitants, such an important place in the art world? And that even though some of the works take years to find their ways into the hearts of the locals. Indeed, even after 20 years, some of them are still good subjects of debate. For example, a steel sculpture is supposed to give a modern aesthetic look to the old city wall. I've always wondered what this rusty old thing's doing here. Don't you think it's ugly? It just doesn't go with the tower. Some of them look rather odd. You find yourself wondering, what are they doing here? On the other hand, most artists do try to be a bit provocative, don't you think? Münster and modern art. This is where the association began. It was donated to the city in 1973. The artist George Ricky was known for his forms in motion, so-called kinetic art. These are the 3 rotating squares by George Ricky. When you look at it, you can see the post in the middle. 3 metal plates are attached to it, squares. They're hanging at an impossible angle. The larger parts of the plates are hanging upwards. That means they're standing upright. In physics, we learned that if they were put up like that, the larger part would hang downwards. But that hasn't happened here. The reason for this is that weights have been built into the bottoms of these plates, so that the plates always point upwards. In 1973, when it was first put up, this work of art caused a lot of controversy and even outrage. You wouldn't imagine what the papers said. An endless flow of readers' letters. The main point was that it was scandalous that such a thing could be called art and be allowed to be put up here. So that was the catalyst for the marriage between Münster and contemporary art that's been taking place over subsequent decades. It was the exhibition of sculpture projects. The Westphalia-Lippe Regional Authority in the city of Münster had the idea of holding a large sculpture exhibition. The very first one in 1977 had a lasting impact on the cityscape. The American Klaus Oldenburg, master of pop art, put 3 gigantic billiard balls on Lake Aasee. The whole lake was meant to be seen as a giant billiard table. This sculpture has now become one of the city's permanent landmarks. One of the initiators of the 4 big sculptural projects exhibitions in 1977, 1987, 1997 and 2007, the curator, Professor Caspar Koenig, together with the head of the Westphalia State Museum for Art and Cultural History, Klaus Bussmann, he managed to get some of the most important contemporary artists to Münster. By putting art into the public outdoors, we've put it where it's not expected. It's not in a museum, so it has to be made plausible. It has to create a coherent perception. It must be understood by those who are open-minded and inquisitive, but it must not be obtrusive. We can't start with any metaphysical statements, thank God. We have to appeal to the intelligence of anonymous people, passers-by, often indirectly, for people who live and work here, for others to join them, for the media to discuss in detail, to give them a different perception of their day-to-day surroundings. And I believe, as you can see, that a relatively large number of works have stayed in Münster, but that wasn't the reason. It was not the starting point. And that they all live their lives discreetly, not blatantly. Art in public spaces. At first it was monumental, like the two concrete rings by Donald Judd. Two rings, the inner one perfectly horizontal, the other sloping at an angle, reflecting the smooth surface of the lake and the angle of the slope. The idea came from nature, yet the concrete rings are in total contrast to the scenery. In particular, the balls by Claes Oldenburg were contentious, but as the newspaper articles of the time show, so were other works too. Billiards uprooted and besieged by the police. Armed with pieces of sheet piling, a group of mainly young people managed to uproot one of the American Claes Oldenburg's giant pool balls. The police arrested 3 people. Between tradition and adventure. An asset or an impertinence? They effectively saved the salaries of 2 journalists for that year by publishing aggressive readers' letters, but this resulted in very differentiated debates. Perhaps the most controversial piece was the work by Ulrich Ruckrim, right opposite St. Peter's Church. These lumps of rock, created in 1976 by Ulrich Ruckrim, sparked off a long-running cultural battle. A vertical wall made of 9 wedge-shaped pieces of rough-hewn stone is right beside the path by St. Peter's Church. It has created a new space. On one side, the late Gothic shapes of the brick and sandstone church. On the other side, the abstract wedges. Expert opinion about it differs. This sculpture was discussed at the highest level. Finally, it had to be taken down in 1981. Let's see whether the people suffer withdrawal symptoms or not, said Ruckrim when they were taken away. The people did suffer from them, so the city acquired tailor-made dolomite and in 1986 put up this sculpture in the same place again. But there were other provocative works, the Yellow Madonna by Katharina Fritsch in Salzstrasse, stolen and damaged twice. One of the best-loved works, and one which also caused a stir, stood in front of the castle in 1997. The Korean-born US media artist Nam June Paik brought 32 old American cars to Münster. Once in place, they were painted completely silver, a monument to our mobile society. During the Sculpture Project exhibition, Mozart's Requiem could be heard coming from inside the cars. Most works, like these, were removed again after 100 days. Several remain, as after every exhibition, purchased thanks to the financial commitment of citizens and institutions in Münster. Realized in 2007, Bruce Naumann's work is staying in Münster. This sculpture made of yew was financed by the entrepreneurial couple Andrea Jeckering. Münster's Historic Mercantile Association, or Kaufmannschaft, bought Martin Boyce's mosaic. The issue of which works should be given a permanent home in Münster always sparks debate. It was no different after the 2007 sculpture projects. One popular highlight of the 2007 show was this sculpture by Silke Wagner. It documents the life and times of Münster citizen Paul Wolf. It's a critical treatment of discrimination and persecution in the Nazi era. Should this sculpture stay in the city? Emotions ran high for several weeks. And the Reichsadler, or Imperial Eagle, by New York artist Martha Rosler, also looks at how we deal with history. A Nazi emblem smack bang in the middle of the city. Provocative. It went down well with people in Münster prepared to back art financially. Despite the debates about the work, they made a purchase possible. A success for Matthias Luckertz of the Friends of the Westphalian State Museum. I was born and bred in Münster, and I have a strong emotional attachment to the city. And I think that in a city like Münster, which has always had a very enlightened populace and has some very fine qualities, we don't need to be scared of dealing with more difficult issues. We shouldn't just focus on the good parts of our history. That's why I think it's great. And from a very personal point of view, I very much like the aesthetic of the work, which is why I'm very pleased it belongs to us now. In the Middle Ages, the Zwinger building on the promenade was part of the city's defences. It served as a prison, and during the Nazi era, it was used as a place of executions by the Gestapo. The artist Rebecca Horn created an impressive installation work. 42 little hammers beat out a rhythm, a memorial that has many meanings. These are Morse alphabets created by the prisoners so they could communicate with each other. This tapping we can hear now is rather reminiscent of it. This installation work, all these little hammers and the little lamp you saw, these funnels too, the basin below, it's all by Rebecca Horn. It was all first installed in 1987. Before then you couldn't even go into the Zwinger. And there's always a droplet dripping down. Can you see it? Münster, City of Sculptures, Europe's largest open-air exhibition of modern art. Works from 4 decades. The American Dennis Adams created useful art with his bus stop, 2 light boxes with photos from the Klaus Barbie trial. Quite poetic, the aerial mast by Lake Arsee with letters made of wire netting.
My dear, you are lying in the grass, your head laid back, not a soul around you. You hear only the wind and look up to the clear sky, into the blue up there where the clouds are passing. It is perhaps the most beautiful thing you have done and seen in your life.
A circle of bricks. Inside this, the Dutchman Herman de Vries has been preserving a piece of nature since 1997. Passers-by can only look inside through peepholes from the 4 points of the compass, and they can see how the flora is able to develop unrestrained. The bramble, the ash, and another ash here on the right. Mountain ash. And over there at the back, you can even see the oak tree. If we don't do anything in our gardens for a long time, they'll look like that. Yes, it will be very interesting to leave nature to its own devices, and in 100 years, to see what has happened in this space. The City Hall courtyard was redesigned for the city's 1,200-year anniversary. The Spanish sculptor Eduardo Chillida created a sculpture for this, the City of Westphalian Peace, Tolerance Through Dialogue. That's the title of 2 steel benches embedded in historic building material. Dr. Berthold Tillmann thinks it's one of the city's most beautiful sculptures. This sculpture is, in the truest sense of the word, one which the people of Münster and its many visitors have adopted as their own. That's how it should be. They can sit on one of the stylized benches, can talk to each other, and can basically experience what the sculpture is supposed to depict, namely the practice of tolerance through dialogue. Not through the power of weapons, not from brute force, but they should talk it through, talk to each other, reconcile their interests, symbolically. I don't know if everybody who sits on the sculpture there does so, but I believe that if they think about the meaning of the object, they'll see the statement, what it's trying to say, quite quickly. Near the castle between the promenade and the university buildings at Hindenburg Square, the Dane Per Kirkeby has completed 2 projects. One sculpture looks like a ventilation shaft. Not everybody can see that it's a piece of art. One and then another. 2 brick sculptures by Mr. Kirkeby, a Danish artist. Here he worked in brick. This is the typical brick, the typical building material, that's still used for building in Münster. Kirkeby has created a relationship here between sculpture and architecture. It looks like a window, but it's not a window. Everything behind it is enclosed. It looks slightly open, but it closes flush with the surface. As for this horizontal piece of art, people use it to sit on, as a table, or for goodness knows what. You can also see the difference. This one looks much older, more worn than the vertical structure here. Like so many other works of art that were put up during the sculpture exhibitions, Kirkeby's works were not put up for eternity. Many were only designed to last for the duration of the exhibition, about 100 days. The result is that time has taken its toll on many of them, and they need extensive restoration. Many of the works of art are given a lot of care before the next exhibition. The steel sculpture Dialogue with Johann Conrad Schlaun outside the city gates. A solid steel cube weighing 40 tons is 7 degrees lower on one side. It bows to the Baroque architecture of the Ruschhaus that the adjacent avenue leads to. The Westphalian poet Annette von Droste-Hülshoff lived here. A contrast between the elated Baroque architecture and the monumental steel, created by Richard Serra in 1996. But time is taking its toll on this too. Constant maintenance of the more than 60 sculptures in the city would be unimaginable without the support of sponsors. Two of them are Mr. and Mrs. Andrea Jeckering. I don't find the graffiti all that bad. I just think it has to be removed from time to time. Graffiti shows that somebody has thought about this object, and I think that's what Serra wanted too. He wants to say something and show something with this object. He wants to demonstrate the axis. He wants to demonstrate himself. He wants to demonstrate the material, and that the material can be used too. But I think that the Serra needs to be given its original clothing of rust again from time to time. Now it needs a peaceful surface so that it can have some effect. All this hullabaloo, as I'd call it, knocks it. Of course, I find it great that the city of Münster does all this for other works of art. And for me, it's part of being a citizen that whoever can and wants to can take on such sponsorship. Every 10 years, like the Sculpture Project's 2007. The opening festivities in the State Museum and a popular festival to get into the swing of the 100-day exhibition. "34 projects by 36 artists from 14 countries were presented in the public realm. A flower made of sawn-off surfboards by Marco Lehanka. In front of the Erbdrostenhof, a former mansion house, Andreas Siegmann places a protest sculpture consisting of 13 squashed plastic figures. An inverted pyramid by Bruce Naumann. An artwork surrounding an existing fountain by Thomas Schutter. And a kind of exhibition within an exhibition by Dominique González Förster. A public toilet gets a revamp by artist Hans-Peter Feldmann. A retrospective. Preparations for the Sculpture Project's 2007 exhibition. Late in the summer of 2006, Polish artist Paweł Althammer chose the intersection of several bicycle paths and footpaths to create an imaginary trail, a trail that leads nowhere.
I don't see people like biking through the field or to go to trying to design their own ways. It's very good, they accept it. And the tradition of the path for me was to be a child, walking not through designed ways, but looking for curiosities. And there are very many examples of shortcuts in Poland. One of the first solution or impression when I was invited was to do the countryside, I mean the outside. The Münster as a place for sculpture project and the outside of it, or somehow to escape from the context.
Althammer is looking for his own path. Like all the artists taking part in the sculpture projects, he was invited to visit Münster. That way, the artists build up a relationship with the city and can research the locations for their works. Belgian artist Guillaume Bijl came up with a sculpture for the 2007 show that resembles an archaeological dig. From drawing to model to the finished sculpture. The tip of a church spire is visible in a deep hole. In the eye of the beholder, it blurs the lines between art and reality. The work was influenced by the many towers and churches in Münster. It's thought-provoking. It makes you ponder fiction and reality. The sculpture projects in 2007 was accompanied by a wide-ranging program. It included 365 public tours, by foot or by bicycle. German President Horst Köhler experienced the sculpture project by bicycle. The history of the sculpture projects from 1977 to 2007 was presented in an archive exhibition with photos, models and letters by artists. Curator Brigitte Franzen is pleased with the new drafts that will stay in the museum and happy about a successful summer of art. It's a huge resource, a real treasure trove that we can continue to work with. Beyond these sculptures, there's the correspondence, the models, sketches of works that were not realized and that are presented here in the archive exhibition for the first time. We have a selection of 85 projects. Over the course of the exhibits in 77, 87, 97 and 2007, over 175 internationally renowned artists have taken part in the exhibition here. 2007 has been the most successful exhibition so far, notching up 600,000 visitors. And again, it was a very special task. The 10-year rhythm of the exhibition is key. It means that so much has changed in society, but of course also in art, that you can create new statements and new situations. In front of the castle, in 1987, Richard Archwager was inspired by the bicycles that are ubiquitous in the city to create his bicycle stand monument. Changing or modifying bicycle stands in Münster hasn't been done by anybody yet. But this is something that people notice on their first visit to Münster, the sheer number of bicycles. Not only moving traffic, but also standing traffic. When you look at it, you don't see straight away that it really is art. You think it's some sort of piece of prefabricated concrete with a hidden purpose. But if the truth be known, it doesn't have a use. It is a piece of art. Unusual. My immediate reaction is that I don't really like it because I find it a bit dull, but oh well, it's artistic license. Münster, a large and unique exhibition of modern art. More than 60 international avant-garde sculptures put their stamp on public space. In Münster, you learn to look at art, is what an art critic wrote about the sculpture projects of 1977. Every 10 years since then, famous artists and ones who've been discovered by the curators of the exhibition create their works, and hundreds of thousands of visitors are drawn to it. Modern art, omnipresent, and a break from tradition that many people have become fond of. For the citizens, it's been a decade-long process during which the face of their city has changed.
There is already knowledge. The people are not only curious, they are educated.
Around 30 to 50 artists take part in each of the sculpture projects. They continue to develop what started in 1973 with the rotating squares. What's important for me is that the high standard continues, and I'm sure that in only a few years we shall have set criteria, as it were, whereby the city and the regional authority and the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, and of course the artists, all say, yes, it is necessary and important for it to continue. 4 decades over which the city has changed, during which art has changed. A unique experiment and an ongoing cultural success story in Münster, the city of sculptures.